It's become pretty obvious by now that the original Super Mario Bros. Hasn't aged the greatest. From the awkward movement resulting in cheap deaths, to the reused level layouts, and just the general unrefined nature of the gameplay. Of course, that isn't to dismiss the impact it had on the Mario franchise, even the video game industry as a whole, to an extent. We simply wouldn't have games like Super Mario 3, Super Mario 64, Super Mario Odyssey had that original 1985 game not planted the seeds for something much greater. At least, that seems to be the consensus of modern day players. And for a long time, I shared that sentiment. I'm not exactly sure if I can pinpoint the exact moment down, but at some point, I had an epiphany. What if I didn't hold down the run button? That might sound bizarre to some. Why shouldn't you always hold down the run button in a Mario game where that is an applicable action to take? Well, it's not like walking is exceedingly slow or anything, at least in this game. And if you keep getting punished for constantly rushing through the levels, then maybe you might be better off not doing so as often. So, that's exactly what I did. So enough, I'd be in line to the fact that, well, this game still holds up pretty well, actually. Going through the courses in a more methodical way really made me reassess how to engage with the gameplay. In my mind, it stopped being just about reaching the flagpole, instead, long-term survival. I started purposely searching for coin blocks to gain lives. I started to think more about when I should sprint. I started noticing clear telegraphing for your power-up abilities in the stage design. But at the same time, there were still moments of breakneck platforming locomotion, complemented with more strategic action. Yes, Super Mario Bros. Is a strategy platformer game, this point isn't contestable. And it can be great, honestly. And for the most part, it is great. What keeps the gameplay really engaging even when the level design gets really basic is that there can always be that looming threat of difficult to evade enemies like Paratroopas, Hammer Bros, whatever else you can think of. Combine that with limited air control that forces a level of commitment to your jumps, and it makes literal flat stretches of ground feel intense. I'm aware there's people who view these sorts of limited controls as bad, but personally, I don't see a difference between this and something like the early Castlevania games, where the stages are designed with the limited control in mind. Though, those games are definitely a much more extreme example of that kind of stuff, and not everyone's a fan of how those control either, so it might just be a preference thing. Honestly, the boss fights in this game, or rather, the one boss fight in this game, isn't even that difficult. In fact, if you're lucky enough, you might be able to just damage boost through Bowser and head straight for the axe. If you're lucky enough, that is. With everything that comes beforehand, like the lava bubbles, the perpetually torquing fire bars, and the tight platforming, it's unlikely you'll make it to the bridge outside of your puny-sized form. With all that said though, yeah, I think it's fair to consider the course itself as a part of the boss fight. It's pretty common to see underwater levels in the Mario series to be considered boring, shit, and slow. Yet in the very first game they appear in, to my knowledge, they're anything but. Going underwater in this game is like playing a Danmaku game, though with a much lower quantity of bullets, but you don't have the ultra-precise octagonal control of those games, so it underflows back into Danmaku-like territory. Again, that might not sound great in practice, and in isolation, may not even be that fun in the first place, but in the context of the rest of the game and its mechanics, it manages to coalesce into another frantic yet fun layer to a playthrough. Though I'd maybe advise against going into any optional underwater areas for coins or whatever. It isn't worth the trouble. Fuck those bloopers. Side note, it's kind of fucked up how weird the cloud sprites look recolored as the bushes. What the hell is this? And the whole game is like that to a degree. Not the weird-ass bushes part, but the whole frantic, yet still fun, things. Compared to the following games after Super Mario Bros. 2, doesn't matter which one, extra lives are significantly harder to obtain and don't get handed out like they're candy. The lack of a proper continue feature, making getting a game over all the more of a lingering threat, besides the title screen code, which you likely didn't know about. Sprinting acting almost like a precursor to the P-meter sprint that would that would be introduced in Super Mario Bros. 3, sorta. Searching for power-ups and coins while enemies and other obstacles get hurled out at you. The bullet bills that show up on some of the later athletic cliff courses. And those cheap courses. You really can't blindly rush through any of the courses beyond the first few without getting your ass kicked. The only other course that isn't like that is 4-1. That's really only due to a programming error with how Lakitu throws spinies. Other courses with Lakitu in them aren't trivialized nearly as hard by it. To wrap this all up, let's talk about the final course. That seems fitting, right? Yeah, they really went all out for this. Got lava pits, infinite scrolling, pipes that take you all over the place, the singular moving platform that will fuck you up. Why the hell is this part of the castle in particular underwater? Like, is it the septic tank or something? Is that where the endless spawning cheeps come from? And this goddamn Hammer Brother and its lava bubble pal can go to hell for all I care. They might as well be the real final boss. Real quick, I want to reiterate that yes, I do in fact really like this game, but the fact that they added one last screw you pipe that takes you all the way back to the beginning is truly something else. If you manage to get through all those trials and tribulations, you'll defeat the real Bowser, who'll later be resurrected with black magic. Princess, game is beaten, full stop. I don't know what to make of the implications of Princess Peach being only as tall as small Mario. And like she said, pushing the B button will return you to the title screen with the ability to select a world to start in and a new quest. The new quest essentially being a hard mode where enemies move twice as fast, Goombas get replaced with Fuzzy Beetles, bullet bills start showing up earlier on, probably some other obscure shit that I don't feel like looking into. Despite my tone, honestly, it's pretty cool. Only further helps emphasize the best qualities about the game, which is also cool. Overall, Super Mario Bros., I think it's pretty underrated. It's really the kind of game you need to play more calculated than a typical 2D Mario game. You gotta be aware of your surroundings. You gotta be actually looking out for coins for once. You gotta be keeping up the life count to reach the end. The level design and game mechanics come together to form an experience that always manages to not only keep you engaged, but also be really damn enjoyable as well. Not to say I don't have any grievances, the recycled courses, janky hitboxes and whatnot come to mind. I personally don't think they crop up nearly often enough to become major issues. And while it's true that later games would expand upon this game with less restricted controls and more power-ups, that doesn't necessarily mean it can't hold up on its own as something that's also pretty good, or that it's wholly outdated. Also, I'd like to say, some of those later games are a bit dubious in being a fun game department, but I'll save those subjectively incorrect qualms for another day. If you were to play this game nowadays, and no, I do not mean play up to 1-2, take the warp zone to 4-1, then 8-1, and immediately game over, then the best way would be on a PC emulator of your choosing with a legally purchased ROM file obtained from your local game store, though the NES Nintendo Switch Online app isn't a bad option either. If you want something that's quicker to jump into, especially if you're less technologically knowledgeable. Also, while you're at it, consider checking out Versus Super Mario Bros. As well. It's a weird-ass version of the game that circulated in arcades around 1986, with 6 new courses replacing the reused ones, and tweaked level design to make it harder. It got re-released back in 2017 on the Switch as a part of the Arcade Archive series, and it somehow always manages to end up in the top 40 best-selling games on the Nintendo Switch eShop. Gotta get your daily dose of Super Mario somehow, I guess. Also, you may or may not have heard, but there was a sequel to this game called Super Mario Bros. 2 that's heavily based off the first one. Despite what people say, it's also pretty good, and not actually that unfair. Maybe I might talk more about that game in the future, if I feel like it. To anyone watching who came in thinking this game's kinda mid, or that it sucks, I probably didn't change your mind at all. But at the very least, I hope my experience of learning to really like this game offered a new perspective for those who don't. Not to get too off topic, but that's essentially the kind of stuff I like doing, offering new perspective on things I'm interested in. There's just so much that I want to talk about. I've got practically years worth of ideas for videos that I've thought about making before. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, Super Mario World 2 still better, though.